If you've ever seen something like this and thought, how in the world does someone create such awesomeness such as that graphic? Well, we're going to answer that coming up. Hey, what's up, folks? I'm Sam DeZeo, and welcome to this week's episode. In this week's episode, we're going to be talking about making a call-out title. That's what this is called, a call-out title. And if you missed last week's episode, I actually released a video describing how I am giving away a free template of a call-out title. So if you're someone who just doesn't have the time or doesn't want to create this on your own, then fear not, because you can just download the template for free and you won't have to do any of this. But if you are someone who likes to do everything on your own and just create things how you exactly want them to look, then you are in the right place. If you want that download, just hit the card in the upper right corner, or if you're on desktop, obviously just hit that link on your screen. Alright, so let's dive into how to actually make this. So I'm going to start out by, I'm going to close this and just start from scratch. I'm going to make a new comp by hitting the new comp button, and I'm going to go with 1920 by 1080 and just go with 24 frames a second. So right now my clip is about 4 seconds. I'm not sure how long it needs to be, so I think that's actually right. I think that's how long my video clip is. So I'm just going to leave it at that. Yours will vary, obviously. And my video layer is basically just a still frame. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to quickly size this up to get rid of the markings on the side, and I'm going to just keyframe the position and scale real quick. So it looks like it's zooming in or moving over the length of this clip. So something as simple as that works. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to just follow the lens here. So that is our goal. So we want a little bit of movement so we have actually something to follow. So I'm going to close that, and I'm just going to lock this because we really don't ever need to touch that again. So the next step is actually to create the title, and you don't want to do that within your final comp. So I'm actually going to rename this comp 1 final comp, so I'm able to differentiate a little better. And I'm going to make my title in an actual composition. That needs to live in its own composition. So I'm going to make a new composition, and I've already kind of done this, so I know that it needs to be about 700 pixels by 200. Now yours will vary, and I'm also going to make this 24 frames and same length, so I'm going to hit OK. Now one trick I like to do is I like to hit Command or Control Y, add a solid, and then if I go over to my final comp, I can just drag that in there and see what that size actually is in a 1920 by 1080 composition. So then I actually know, and I can kind of play around with the size. So this size works for me, so I'm just going to leave it as is. And let's just create some boxes here. So I'm going to make our first line by just, we can get rid of our stroke. We don't really need a stroke. I'm just going to add a fill, make it white, and create a nice thin line that goes across. It doesn't need to go all the way across, so I'm going to make it about there. And one thing I like to do is adjust my anchor point. So I know that this line is going to animate from left to right, so I'm going to put my anchor point at the left side here. And this is actually a external plugin that I downloaded, and it makes life so much easier. If you just click in the middle, it moves your anchor point to the middle, and it just makes life easier. And if you're interested in that plugin, you can just go ahead and check out the description, and I'll have that link there for you. So we have that set up, and I'm just going to rename this middle line. Alright, now I'm going to make another box. Make sure our other shape is not selected, so we make another shape. I'm just going to make a larger box for our main title that goes here, and put, let's see, put our anchor point at the bottom so we can have this animate up. And then I'm going to add another shape by clicking off of that shape, and I'm going to pick another color. So I'm going to go with like a bluish color, maybe a little green in there. And then I'm going to hit OK. Alright, so let's draw just a smaller one, maybe something like that. And I'm going to put my anchor point at the top. Alright, so I'll rename this top white and bottom blue. And to rename, I'm clicking on the layer and hitting enter. That allows me to change the title of the layer. All right, so now we have the makings of our title. Now I'm going to go back and we can see this update. So this is kind of what the size is, and I think for right now that might be a good size. I'm actually going to bring this down a little bit, maybe just increase the size of this shape just a hair. Maybe the size of this one too. All right, I think that looks a little better. All right, so the next thing we want to do is actually make the target. So I'm going to make a new composition that also needs to live in its own composition, and I'm going to make this one about 75 pixels by 75 pixels. We want to make it a perfect square. So this seems pretty small, but the target itself is small, so that's all right. So I'm just going to make a simple looking target, kind of like the Target's brand logo, and I'll draw a circle, put the anchor point in the center, and go to my align and center this up perfectly. And then I'm going to draw another circle with my stroke. I'm going to turn that on and actually turn my fill off so we get just the stroke, and draw a circle from here. And I'll probably need a little bit bigger of a stroke, so we'll play with that. I'll bring that up. All right, so let's set that in place. So I need to move my anchor point to the middle, just like everything else, and make sure this is adjusted to the middle. All right, I think that will work. So let's rename these compositions just so I know. So this is our title comp, and this is our target comp. All right, so I'm going to go back into my final comp and drop in my target. And I'm going to move it over the lens for now. So we're going to just leave it there. So the next thing we want to do is actually make the beam that connects from the target to the title. So in order to do that, you don't want to just make a straight line, because that comes with different complications. You can't just keyframe you can't connect one side of that line to the target or one side of that line to the title. So the way we work around that is actually to make a new solid. So I'm going to go layer new solid and make sure that this one is pure white, and I'm going to hit OK. It can be the size of your comp, and actually I recommend that. So next I'm going to go to my effects and presets and just type in beam. So I want that, and I'm going to drag that on my solid. And I'm going to call this layer connecting line. All right, so we can see our beam here, and by default it has this like reddish pink color. We don't want that, so I'm just going to change both of these colors to white. And it still has a little bit of kind of a glow, but you can just turn the softness all the way down, and now it's just a straight up line. The nice thing about this beam though is we can actually move this around, move our starting and ending point around, and we can connect like one point to our target and one point to our title here. So I don't want to get into that just yet, but you might notice that this line isn't full. That's an easy fix by just going up to length and dragging that baby up to 100%. All right, so what I actually want to get into now is connecting these objects to nulls. We have to do that because we also want to parent each end of these to the nulls as well. So I'm going to go to layer, new, and null object, and call this one target null. And I'm going to move this down to our target object, and then I'm going to parent our target comp to our target null. So if we start moving around our target null, actually just our target null, the target comp moves with it as well. So let's make another and call it title null, and of course we're going to parent the title to the title null. Actually first, sorry about that, we need to move the title null, otherwise we won't be able to without the composition moving. Alright, so now it's parented, so if we move that around it will move as well. Alright, so now we want to connect one end of this to, actually one end to each. So the way we want to do that is we want to go to our connecting line, drop down effects, drop down beam, and now we have access to the starting and ending point. So I'm going to do the starting point by hitting Alt and then the stopwatch on starting point. And then that opens up our expression controls. And really simply all we need to be doing is pick whipping or parenting to the position of our target null comp. So I'm going to go to my target null, hit P, and then that gives me my position for that. And I'm just going to parent to the position. Now once I move in the playhead, it'll update, and we can see that this moves along with it. And it's just that one side, it's not both sides. So that's the advantage to not parenting the connecting line layer to a null. So that's why we have to use these nulls in the way that we are. So I'm going to do that to the other side, and I'm going to hit P and hit my Alt button and then parent up to the position of my title, and then let this update. And now if we, see, now we need to be careful, so I'm actually going to lock these layers because we don't need to touch them. All we need to be touching are these null layers. See, this is all that we need to affect. Alright, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to animate our point. So I want this to pretty much stay in the middle of the lenses throughout this whole clip here. So I'm going to animate the position of my target null, and I'm just going to set a keyframe here, drag to the end, and set a new keyframe by just moving this. That'll automatically set a keyframe, as you can see. So just moving that will set the keyframe. So as we can see over time, it tracks that pretty well because it's a simple movement. Yours might be a little more complicated and you might need to spend a little more time, but that's the basic idea. You just need to keyframe your whole clip. So now what I kind of like to do is I like to add just a little bit of movement to my title. That's just kind of preference. I think that looks a little bit better. So I'm just going to add some subtle movement by keyframing over the length of this composition. There we go. Alright, so next what I want to do is I want to actually animate the individual parts of this. So I'm going to do this pretty simply by going into my target comp and just selecting both of these, hitting S for scale, and adding a keyframe here. So I'm going to drag my playhead a little bit and hit another keyframe. So I'm going to set my first keyframe to 0, let that pop up. What I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight these and hit F9, and that'll add easy ease, and that kind of makes it more of an easing look, but I want it to be a little more refined, so I'm going to go into my graph editor and just pull these together a little bit, so that gives us a little bit more of a different look. I'm going to do that for both of them though, so we can see a little bit better what it's actually doing. There we go. So it kind of slows in and then speeds up really fast and then slows down towards the end of that animation. So I like that. I just want to slow it down just a little bit. I think that's alright. Alright, so if we go back into our final comp, we can see that being represented right here. There we go. Alright, so the next thing we want to do, if we want to do this in order, is animate this beam. Well, this is actually really simple. So we want to kind of do that at the end of this popping up, or at least it needs to be sort of popped up. So I'm just going to drag to the point where it's at least pretty visible, covering as much as it's about to, and go to my connecting line, which obviously needs to be unlocked. And I'm going to go to my time, and right now it's at 50%. And what I actually want to do is set that to 0, because we can see that's just going to bring it all the way in. 100 will bring it to the other side. So at 50, it's right in the middle. So I'm going to bring it to 0, keyframe, and then I'm going to hit U on my keyboard to bring up the keyframes of this layer, drag a little bit in time, and just set my new value to 50. So that'll move it from 0 to 50%, moving it into place. So if we click off, we can kind of see what it looks like a little bit better. Unfortunately, even when set to 0, we have a little bit of a dot here. So I'm going to go to the front part of this and just hit Alt and then left bracket, and that'll cut this off. That way it's not visible before it's supposed to come in. Alright, so I'm going to slow that down a little bit and pretty much do the same thing that I did to the circles. So I'm going to ease that, go into my graph editor, and pull these towards each other a little bit. I like that movement, but I want it a little bit slower. I think that's alright. Alright, so now we want to animate our title. So what we wanted to do is this to animate all the way up, and then once this hits this point, we want this line to shoot out. So if we go to that point, and then just go to our title composition, we'll be at that same point on this composition, that same point in time, I should say. So what we want to do is go to our middle line right here on our playhead. We don't want to move our playhead right now. And I'm going to just go to scale, because remember I set my anchor point to this side. So now if I unlock the X and Y scale and I just adjust our X scale, it's adjusting from that side. So if I just set this to 0 right now, set a keyframe, and then go a little bit farther in time and set that back to 100, now this will grow over time. And the great thing about it is it will grow right on cue. Now that needs a little bit of adjusting, but as you can see, it comes in when it's supposed to. The one thing I'm noticing here is that this end slows down, which we don't want it to. We want it to kind of look like one continuous line. And in order to turn this back into a keyframe that doesn't slow down or doesn't ease in, I'm going to just hit Command or Control on your keyboard and click this. And that will turn that into a keyframe that doesn't ease in and doesn't slow down. So let's look at that now. See, it looks so much more like just a one line animation that's happening. So in order to make it look like it's ending as that one line, I'm going to go to my title composition and just make this the ease keyframe. So I'm going to hit F9, and I'm going to do that little trick to make this come out a little farther and ease into that a little bit better and slow that down. Yeah, I think that's good. Alright, so if we watch this back, yeah, I think that looks really good. I think that looks like one solid line. Alright, so as you can see, I can kind of point this out just because it's a tutorial, but this is a little bit off, so you want to kind of fine tune that before you get to this point. But I do want to point out, if we go to our connecting line, our line is a little thick. So if I just bring our starting thickness and our ending thickness down to like 5 or so, that's actually a little thin, so maybe I go to 6. We can kind of match the size, which makes this a whole lot better actually. We can match the size of our lines and make them match a little bit better. And again, that just makes it look like one continuous line. Alright, so now let's continue to animate our title. So first I'm going to add a simple animation and make sure my anchor points are in the right spot, which I adjusted these so they're a little off. And I'm just going to animate the Y scale of both the top and bottom lines. So I'm going to hit S for scale for both of these, and I'm going to unlink both of these. So now we can just animate the Y scale. So if I hit scale, keyframe on both of these, go forward in time, make these 100, and then go back and make these 0. And then I'm just going to keyframe or easy ease these now because I know I'll want to, because I just love the look of that. It makes it look so much more fluid, more modern, I think. And I'm going to ease this kind of how we've been doing. You've seen me do it before, so this is nothing new. There we go. Alright, so I'm just going to kind of set these a little bit happening a little bit at a different time. Actually, I want the white one to come in first, so I'm going to undo that. Move the bottom line a little back. There we go. I like that better. Just for my sanity, I'm going to put the white top one above here on the layers, just so I know what's going on. Alright, so that's looking good so far. So what I want to do now is add the little outline animation that you've seen in the example. So in order to do that, we actually need to add another rectangle. So I'm going to give it a stroke that is white and get rid of the fill. Actually, hold on. I was adjusting our top white. So make sure nothing is selected, that way you make a new shape. So then I'm going to go to my shape, create a shape here. That's the exact same size, actually a little bit smaller because we're compensating for a stroke here. So a little bit smaller is fine. I'm going to go with an 8-point stroke. I'm kind of just eyeballing it at this point. And then I'm going to do that again, make sure nothing is selected, and do that again. I'm again going to use a white stroke and just move it over here. Alright, so we can see we have our strokes, and I'm actually going to turn our normal shapes off so we can work without them for right now. And this is a little bit too thick of a stroke, so I'm just going to adjust the stroke and turn it down to 5. I think that'll work. Oops. And adjust this one to 5 as well. Alright, so how we animate this is actually going into this drop down here and going to add and then trim paths. So if we open up this trim paths effect that is added and we start playing with the start and ending points, we can see how this trims our path, which is, I guess I gave it a good name. So I'm going to just come up with something here where they both start at one point, and then over time this one comes in and finishes, and then our ending, we can keyframe that, and it does the exact same thing but a little bit behind. So what you end up getting is kind of a stroke that happens way too fast. Give me a second here. There we go. So that's the kind of stroke we can get from that. So I'm just going to leave it at that for now. You can mess with it and make it whatever you want. I'm going to give it easy ease, of course. And I'm also going to quickly do this to the bottom layer. So drop down, go to trim paths under this add section, and drop that down. And I'm going to bring this to about the middle here. What is that, 27? So I'm also going to put this one at 27 so they start in the same place. So keyframe both of these, and move this out, and move this up to about that corner. Along with this side, we'll move that up to that corner. So we get something like that. And we'll ease that also. Alright, cool. So let's open up the keyframes of these two, and we'll have them kind of happen at similar times. Alright, but one thing I do want to note is that we want this to happen under our original layers. So we'll turn these on, see what they look like together. Alright, so it's happening as it's supposed to, except just at the wrong time. So I'm going to kind of move these a little bit back, and then I'll move my shape layer 2 back. It's the point where it's right before. I think that looks okay. Alright, so the last thing we want to do is add text. So I'm going to hit the text tool and just type in, "This is the new iPhone." And unfortunately our text is below our layer, so we'll just move it up, move it in place, I'm not going to do too much formatting on this thing because that's not the point of this video. And I'm just going to duplicate this and, I don't know, secondary line. Alright, so I'll bring that down. And obviously you can adjust the width of this to match what you want it to look like. Alright, so move that up. Alright, so for example's sake, that is fine. So one thing I wanted to do is move our secondary line above our bottom line layer, and then our main title is above our top line. So in order to kind of animate this as well and reveal this, what we need to do is duplicate our bottom line by doing Command or Control D, bringing it above our text, and then going to our text layer and going to Alpha Matte Bottom Blue 2. So now when this animates, it animates and just reveals this. So even if we turn this off, you can see that it's not there until the blue line says it will be there. So we're going to do the same thing with the top. So we're going to duplicate, move this up, go to our text, and go to Alpha Matte. So same thing. So now if we go to our final comp and just view this, so yeah, we walk away with a perfectly done call out title. This is really good. And remember that we can always adjust where our title is. So we can kind of move this around. Obviously we don't see it yet, but it comes in at a little bit of a different point. So this is totally customizable at this point, and it makes everything so much easier when you need to go back and change things. Guys, I hope you really enjoyed this episode and got something out of it and learned something about After Effects and how it works and how you can parent different things, not just layers. That's really what this effect comes down to. So if you liked this video, go ahead and hit that like button. That really helps me out a lot, so I really appreciate it. If you got something out of this video, go ahead and leave me a comment below telling me how you use this, or send me a link to something that you use this in a video. I'd love to see it. If you want to see other videos, go ahead and hit some of the links on your screen right now, and you can watch other After Effects tutorials or review videos. Guys, again, I really appreciate it. If you like this video, hit subscribe and you'll see a new one every single week. I'll see you in the next video.